The thing that didn't happen for me was I didn't make that shift in my own identity of being an owner-operator, a chiropractor, a caregiver, to becoming the CEO of the business. And because I didn't have that shift, I was literally crisscrossed.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. So you can see we're in a different location. We're sitting in studio because this is a studio weekend. Dr. Pete and I are coming off of just a hardcore copywriting marathon and filming. We're shooting VSLs for a Remarkable CEO initiative.
Yeah.
So Dr. Pete, great working with you as always.
Thanks, man. It's great work. I'll tell you, it's I never knew the amount of work that goes into producing any form of copy or any videos, the amount of lift and work that goes into it. And I think it's amazing because when you think about becoming a chiropractor and all the years that you had to put into studying, right? You kind of forget that, like the amount of energy and effort that goes into producing anything of value. And, you know, we have patients that come in and say things like, well, I don't know if I believe in chiropractic or I'll go check with my doctor. You're like, oh my gosh, if you knew all the steps that had to happen for me to even get here and for you to get here, it's crazy. But what I do is I'm appreciating more the effort, energy, work, the focus, the time, energy that goes into producing anything. I'm excited about what we created today, Dr. Steve. I don't know if we can talk about it, but, we had a chance to, spend some time over the past couple weekends working, being out in chiropractic world. We were in ChiroFest, you've been in Michigan, and we've had some amazing opportunities to rub shoulders with our brothers and sisters. And the cool thing is we've been getting just awesome feedback, people loving our podcast. So if you're listening to our podcast, so grateful to be a part of this with you. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So I wanted to double click on just one concept that we sort of teased out of our copywriting today was when we talked about we have our tagline of it's about having a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. And I just want to make sure that it doesn't just live like that. It's not just a tagline, it's a premise for everything that we're doing, right? So, And what we just sort of distilled down was in order to accomplish that, two very specific changes need to be made by a chiropractor, right? So we've identified, number one, you got to take your job and turn it into a business. And number two, you've got to become you've got to make this identity shift yourself. You've got to go from being the owner-operator to being the CEO, right? So I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to just tell our stories because, a lot of people listening, they don't know your story. Probably a lot of them don't know mine. I think it's the perfect way for us to just demonstrate what does that mean when you go from having a job to having a business just through the lens of our own story.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a family myself. My dad was a business owner, small business, property and casualty, life insurance type stuff. And, I remember, before I became a chiropractor, he was basically telling me he didn't love what he did. And he said his only advice to me before going to college was find something that you love to do. Yeah. I think he enjoyed being a business owner. I think he enjoyed that element, which is interesting that this is going to come full circle for this conversation. I think he really loved being an entrepreneur, being a business owner. And I don't think he found the work that he loved to do, but he loved the idea of being a business owner. I think he felt a little bit, out of sorts in his work. He was trained and that was what his degree was in college. And he didn't necessarily use that, but he said that to me. And so, for me, my career as a business owner started by watching my dad and me going into his office when I was younger and doing mailings for him and things like that. And, I learned that, in order to pull a business off and make this happen, it requires a lot of people, a lot of work, and a lot of hours. My dad put a lot of hours in, missed a lot of our, games, a lot of our things growing up. None of this really registered for me as a kid. Yeah. Really, I mean, some kids probably it does. For me, it didn't. I was focused on playing sports and playing with my friends and just having fun. And, when I finally got serious about, being a professional of some sort, I was looking for a job, something that I would actually love to do. Like my dad advised me. I'm so glad I found chiropractic. The thing that is, the awakening that we talk about, those two steps is you go to undergrad. I became an occupational therapist. A lot of people don't know that. There was a point in time in my career, I was the only licensed occupational therapist and chiropractor in the United States. There was no other chiropractor who was also an occupational therapist.
Very cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's cool. So my experience in getting into chiropractic was, two real parts. One was my brother Jonathan's sickness growing up. People say, well, how did you become a chiropractor? A lot of people say, well, I hurt my knee or my back playing football or ice hockey or something. For me, it was my brother, him going through all sorts of health conditions. He had asthma, he had allergies, he had headaches. And, the traditional medical path was the path that my parents went. They didn't know anything different. That's what we grew up with. So that's what we knew. Right. So I remember specifically, one of my jobs growing up was doing the dishes. We would do a week on, week off of dishes. So I was on the dishes, and I remember, we would unload the dishwasher oftentimes and then load the dishwasher. So I remember unloading the dishwasher, and the sink was here, the dish was to the right. And I remember the cabinet just to the right above the dishwasher where we put the cups and the glasses. And I remember unloading the top rack of the dishwasher, putting the cups and glasses, and on the door, when you open the door of that cabinet, it was the days of the week, and it was all my brother Jonathan's medications. So here I am in high school, my brother's in high school, and here's a list of all the drugs that my brother was taking. Right. The problem was he wasn't getting any better. My mom and dad wanted my brother to get healthy. What parent wants to see their kid suffer? None. And I remember watching my brother get just sicker and sicker and sicker. He got a full scholarship to Seton Hall University, and it's a very good school, and he got a full academic scholarship to go there. And after his first semester of his freshman year of college, he dropped out because he was so sick he couldn't go. My parents ended up taking him to Mexico, to what's called the Gershon Institute, which is where people who are suffering with cancer go for natural health solutions. We were advised to go there. Long story short, come back to US, and he's doing all this natural things, enemas and juicing and eating healthy and going to the chiropractor. Yep. Well, this opened my eyes to this concept of health, and real healing in healthcare. Because I watched my brother suffer for 10 years going what we would call as chiropractors the traditional allopathic medical route. Yep. And then I watched his life get transformed and saved within a year, going more of a vitalistic route, including chiropractic care and focusing on his nutrition and his health and detoxification. And so with that experience for me, that was my launch into my career. I just didn't know if I had the chops to go to school that long because I didn't know if I wanted to. Coming out of high school, I was kind of like, I don't know what's for me. My mom really encouraged me that I should pursue an education, but I was like, I don't want to waste time and money not knowing what I want to do. And thankfully, my brother went through that experience, and I watched it, and I was like, you know what? Becoming a chiropractor might be cool. Yeah. So that was really where my career began.
Well, God lights our path with people, right? Yeah. So that's interesting. The combination of your brother and his experience in chiropractic kind of shine a lot on what you wanted to do. And I can really relate to your story with your dad when you're talking about, growing up watching your dad as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. He found himself in a place where he loved being an entrepreneur, but wasn't necessarily the field. Mm-hmm. He wasn't passionate about the field, but passionate about being an entrepreneur, right? So I think I got my first taste of what it meant to be a business owner when we were in first college and then undergrad and then at chiropractic school. So I started a window cleaning company, and my stories of the window cleaning, my window cleaning career, I think at this point are infamous. But that was really where I got my start as an entrepreneur. That's where I really learned, I think, that I loved owning businesses and running businesses. And I got my first taste of building a team and creating systems and really what it meant to deliver value for people and create value and capture value. And for me, just spending time on a ladder in the sun in Atlanta, I spent more time at 40 feet in the sun in Atlanta washing windows than I did on the ground or in class, some people would say, in the heat. And it just made me realize that I love being an entrepreneur. I love owning a business, but I don't love washing windows, right? So it made me study harder. It made me appreciate what I was going to do, working with people and helping people in the future. But I definitely got my chops as a business owner, hiring the students. I mean, it was amazing. It was my roommate and I started the business because we were bartending at the time, and we were staying out until 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was so incongruent with what we were learning around health and wellness, that we just I couldn't keep that up anymore. I had fallen in love with Camilo. I needed to get out of the bar scene, right? But I needed to make some cash to pay for school, pay for rent and life. So I needed something that would be able to make good money. So we started this window washing service where in Atlanta, they have all these subdivisions, right? So you could really efficiently flyer an entire neighborhood, 200-300 homes, and hopefully one of them would call you to wash their windows. So we do one house on a Saturday, that'd be rent money. And then one house on a Sunday would be beer money, right?
Nice.
So we got busy enough whereby, by the time I graduated, we had 2 trucks going. I had hired like 8 of the students. I'd moved my brother down to manage my company after he finished at Boston College, and then 2 of my cousins to manage my crews. And we were doing 2 houses a day, 14 houses a week. We had like 600 clients. Long story short, my brother took over the company when I left to go north to start our practice. But he did such great things with something that we had started. We laid down a good foundation, right?
Yeah.
It was good systems. It was good culture, great work ethic. My brother's a very hard worker, very smart guy. I'm super proud of him. He had since diversified. We had started to get into window film and tinting windows and doing buildings and commercial work. Fast forward, he's the largest 3M window film dealer in the world now.
Wow.
Yeah. And, the company's doing $1 million a month. And he's done the Vatican and the White House as clients. So,
amazing.
He's done just awesome things. It's one of those stories. It's like, that's where we first got our business jobs.
Yeah.
And I pulled so much out of that experience and brought that into the practice. I've got an ebook that I wrote called Everything I Needed to Know to Be a Successful Chiropractor. I learned washing windows.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think this is really great for us to talk about this, because as a listener, as you're hearing our story, we had no idea we were going to talk about that. I had no idea you were going to say that. You didn't know my story.
Yeah.
We don't know your story either.
Yeah. One
of the things I would encourage you to do as you're listening to this is go back to your roots. Go back to the roots of your entrepreneurial journey. As a chiropractor, most chiropractors, if you raise your hand on the first day of chiropractic school, they said, everybody goes around and announce who you are and why you're here. It's like, well, I want to help people. Yeah, but did you realize that by helping people, you're going to have to start a business? Like, that's just not, it's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't that I was opposed to starting a business. I had this idea like, I'll have a business, but the idea of it and the actual having a business and then succeeding in business, those are wildly different things.
Yeah. People don't understand. It's 2 careers. You're literally signing up for, you sign up for chiropractic school, and at least the way it used to be taught, it was, you were signing up to be a caregiver. You wanted to take care of patients.
Right.
You wanted to take care of people. You wanted to be a chiropractor, deliver adjustments, educate the patients, love on people, right? Create relationships, and be a doctor. But you are signing up for being an entrepreneur and being a business owner as well, which is a separate and distinct career.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I remember when I was doing my subacute rounds as an occupational therapist when I was finishing up my undergrad, I was working under an occupational therapist. I actually had come here from Africa. And there was a couple other occupational therapists, physical therapists, medical doctors, all part of our team. And, we have the multidisciplinary team, and we do these meetings and we do our rounds. I was working in a rehab center, mostly with like people that had hip replacements, things like that, who had a stroke. And I remember meeting with the team, and I remember right when I was finishing up, I had to do a presentation to everyone there to get credit for my graduate. And I remember them, like, we had like a little party afterwards when I was leaving, and they said, one day you're going to own a hospital. I just remember them saying that. But what I think they were telling me was, this is an identity that I didn't realize about myself, was caregiver was a part of my skill set, but being, a leader, was probably a more glaring skill set that I had.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that till years and years being in practice, being a chiropractor, that I realized I loved being a caregiver. But what I really loved was making sure that people got taken care of. I liked creating an environment for caregiving, right? I loved the idea of the team and building a team and putting great people in so we could take great care of people. I just didn't necessarily fit the mold of being the caregiver only, which is interesting because there's a lot of chiropractors who that is what their gifting is, their strength is. And you should be that.
Right.
Absolutely. And we've had years, decades of being able to be caregivers. Right. But ultimately, what the evolution of our process was, going back to what we started with, which was the transition that had to happen was to go from being the owner operator, caregiver, to becoming the CEO, caregiver only, to becoming the CEO meant there's more caregivers that got to come in.
Yeah.
There's more of them. Like, we just can't. And then that means you had to become a leader, right? You went from being the entrepreneur who could start a business. Hey, I'm washing windows, to we got 2 trucks. So now we're global business. We're doing,
starting to scale, hire people.
Big things change. Yeah. So
creating early signs of durability when I didn't have to be there at those 2 houses, washing them simultaneously. Couldn't be in 2 houses at the same time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, in retrospect, it's like, I think when I started a practice and I chose to become a chiropractor, owning a business or being a business owner at that point in my mind's eye, I knew I wanted to own my own business. But at that age, at my maturity level at that point, what that meant was I'm not going to work for somebody else.
Right.
Right. Which is different than owning a business. Right.
Right.
So there's a totally different attitude around I'm going to become a chiropractor, which is cool because then I don't have to work for anybody else. I can own my own business. Yeah, you know what? That's probably table stakes for starting a business, right? But that's probably just enough rope to hang yourself, right? Next thing you know, you get into this environment where you've got extraordinary responsibilities, right? There's the facets of responsibility that come with owning a business, especially when you start taking care of people, start hiring other people, right? So if you start bringing other paraprofessionals in, et cetera, it's extraordinary. Like there's an entirely next level of skill set and identity that comes with actually owning a business, not just working for yourself. Right? Not just working for yourself. There's an element of this that I think should be a standalone segment, right? So we should do an episode just on this conversation. And that's in chiropractic, in our profession as an industry, I think we've really done our industry and our chiropractors a disservice by yoking chiropractors with the limiting belief that you actually have to own a practice, you have to own a business, you have to actually be the business owner, practice owner in order to be a successful chiropractor. Yeah. And I think that's actually played out in our career and it's played out in our profession. You see it across the board. And I dare I say that very often we speak to associate doctors or we speak about associate doctors, or associate doctors might actually self-identify as almost like a second-class citizen. And I say that with all due respect. I think it's inaccurate, and I think it's a terrible dynamic. That's the natural fruit of saying, if to be a successful chiropractor, you actually have to be the practice owner and own your own business. And it's been my experience and working with 1,000 other doctors that actually those doctors that recognize that as a business owner, as a CEO, it's their job to create an environment where doctors can be successful. So they can be the doctor, the business owner, the clinic director, the CEO, but the CEO at their best is creating an environment where caregivers can be more successful. They can actually focus on taking care of patients, educating and adjusting, creating value, delivering value. And the most successful CEOs that I see recognize that, and they lift, they edify, recognize, and really reward those caregivers. And they start collecting great caregivers. And now they've got a business.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I started as an associate, right? In practice. I think you did as well. Yeah. So there's not there. I have complete honor and respect. Actually, I started as a CA, technically. I started as a front desk CA, then a tech CA. So I was a check-in CA. I was a tech CA. Then I was a intern, and then I was an associate. Then I was a business owner. Then I was a CEO, and now I'm, coaching and consulting. So you walk through all of this, the hats and the journey. But what I'm saying is that, it's an absolutely beautiful season to be in, and then when you look at other professions, if you look at the medical profession, my brother, he's a medical doctor, and he works in a practice and he has an amazing job. He's an amazing caregiver. I don't think it's on his mind, like, that he's less of a doctor because he works in a group with other doctors, right? It's so, I think it's like dentists, the same thing. A lot of dentists are running in practices. No, some are they're going off and doing their own thing. And that's probably more similar to the chiropractic side.
But 85% of dentists all work corporate. 85% of dentists graduating go into the corporate space. And 15% who don't, if you examine those analytics, I bet the majority of that 15% is going to go work with their parent, their father, their mother, their sister, their brother, or somebody that they're moving into nobody's starting a $2.5 million, dental suite with their $750,000 worth of debt. And chiropractic lags dentistry by about 10 to 12 years in industry trends. So what we're seeing is chiropractic's following suit. Chiropractors are graduating school, recognizing that maybe the next best move for me, the next step should be, let me go join a group and let's work in a practice. For some of you, you might be like, no, I'm part of that 30 percentile that should go off and actually start my own practice. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And this is where the remarkable CEO comes in, because I'll tell you, if you're an associate doctor, the last thing you want to do is work for one who is not a remarkable CEO. Like if you are working for an owner operator, that can be really painful. Why? Well, because if you look at the characteristics and the problems that
the classic owner operator is typically they're in a build phase of their career. Now, technically they've scaled because you have an associate, but they haven't made the transition of the identity shift, right? So I shift from being a owner operator to becoming a CEO. That was my story, I had a big successful practice, right? Whatever success means to you, right? Because you determine your definition of success. But to me, I had achieved the definition of success that I set out for myself, or that other people influenced me to say was success. Huge volume, big money, big, team. And we were making an impact in our community, which to me, I actually would say that is success.
Right.
We were helping a lot of people. We had a great brand in our community. We had a huge team. We were interns. We were bringing those from his schools and they were sending them into practices. We were bringing associates in and sending them to open practices. We were training. We were doing all these amazing things. But when
in a vacuum, you were very successful
in a vacuum. Right. Right. And so when I faced, a crisis, let's call it, in my family, my wife, and we became pregnant with our fourth child. My wife, Mary, she got sick in all her pregnancies, but increasingly sick with all of them.
Right.
And so by the fourth child, she was in the bed all day, every day for the 6 months.
Done.
It was 3 other children at home, and so we don't live near family or anything. So I had a choice to make. So I had associates and team. So I chose to go home and be with my family, turn the practice over to the team and the associates. And the practice just slowly just started to shrink, right? The volume shrink, contract, right? The collections. And I'm sitting there watching it from taking care of my family. And, every emotion you can imagine was going through my mind and my heart during that time, fight or flight, constantly in that state of fight or flight. And, I struggled with that for months and months and months and months and months. And when we had the baby and successful pregnancy, Mary was healthy through it. She ended up, delivering an amazing pregnancy of my fourth born, and my son Ryder. And, I remember 2 weeks after he was born, I went back into practice, more full time, right? I was going back full time. And I had to make a decision. Was I going to go back being the owner operator, or was I going to make a shift? I just didn't know what it was, to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't know this concept of becoming a CEO. I had no idea of it. I didn't see my dad do it. I didn't grow up in a corporate office. I didn't know anything about, if you told me what a CEO is, I would think probably some corporate definition of CEO. Right. I didn't know what it would mean to be a CEO of a small business, a chiropractic business as a chiropractor. What does that even mean?
Right.
It did. And when I looked at my mentors, I looked at other people in the profession, I saw no models. I saw nothing. Yeah. So it was really just this desert. We didn't even meet each other till afterwards. We had both had the same epiphanies and discoveries. Yeah. But it's thank God that we did. And I thank God for every step of the journey. But man, it was difficult at that time.
Yeah, brutal. Because you had to make a choice at that point. It's should I go running back in and be the hero and rescue the situation and go back to what you knew, which was being the owner operator? The Navy SEALs always teach, you don't do when the pressure's on and the heat gets turned up, you don't do what you know, you do what you trained on, right? So you revert back to what you trained on. So the heat was up on you and the pressure was on, and you could have just gone right back in there and jumped right back into that owner operator role, which of course you didn't have that title on that at that point, but it was brute force. It was just put it back on me, guys. I'll get it. Let me get this thing back up off the ground and just everybody get around me and support me while I do all the work again, right? So that was instinct.
Yes.
But innately you knew, you know what? This is not sustainable. This is, I don't want to do this again. I'm just going to be propagating the same problem. And you made a shift, right? So now we've put language to it. You made the shift from being the owner operator operating on brute force to becoming the CEO who knows to use leverage to run the business. Yeah. And by leverage, I mean leveraging other people, leveraging systems and communication and technology. So
yeah. I think it's so important because I was what you may say on the fence, right? Because I had hired associates, I felt like I had a business. And I did have a business, right? Because I was gone for 6 months and my business ran with me there 50% or more less of the time. Yeah. I mean, that's a major shift. When you go from 100% of the time there to less than 50% of the time there, that's a pretty significant for 6 months. Right. And the practice did continue, right? It didn't end. We didn't close our doors. But what I realized now as we talk about it was I was splitting the fence because I had turned my job into a business because I had hired associate doctors who could be caregivers and caretakers. Yeah. So I did step one, and I think I did an okay job of it. If I go back and call all those doctors, because they're all great people, I still have a great relationship with them, I can call them now and talk to them. But the thing that didn't happen for me was I didn't make that shift in my own identity of being an owner operator, a chiropractor, a caregiver, to becoming the CEO of the business. And because I didn't have that shift, I was literally crisscrossed. Yeah. It's crisscross. And it
was a straddle strategy.
Yeah. It's a different,
you were in the middle of the lake, right?
Middle of the lake.
You weren't just standing on the shore trying to make a decision. Do I swim out into the middle of the lake?
Yep.
You actually hired the associate. You're now in the middle of the lake, right? And now you're just treading water. And so many docs find themselves there. It's just like they do that one big step that takes you from a job to a business. They hire an associate, right? Yeah. Or multiple associates, but they themselves don't make that shift from the owner-operator identity to that of the CEO. And why is that so important? Is because your perspective changes, right? Your lens changes, and therefore your decision-making process changes, your behaviors change, just like what happened. I mean, you had your fifth child, and that was a different experience.
Yeah, so that's what I love about, the journey that I've been on, is because we've been able to test it multiple times with starting new businesses and having more babies. So when we went through the getting pregnant with number 5,
is that what you call them? Do you call them number 4 and number 5, or did you actually give them names at that point? I mean, is it?
Oh my gosh. So yes, they have wonderful names. So this is Jordan. So we got pregnant with Jordan. I don't know why I'm saying it that way, but thank you for bringing that up. No. He's not number 5. He's Jordan. When we got pregnant with
T-shirt has a 5 on it.
Yeah, exactly. When we got pregnant with Jordan, that was the worst of all the pregnancies. We thought it couldn't get worse than 4.
Yeah.
We really didn't.
Yeah.
5 was like
hold my beer
to be hospitalized level of sickness. And so it was like all hands on deck, and I was there, and we had 4 other children,
right.
So as young as 2 years old, and so there was school, and there was sports, and there was piano lessons, right. And there's all this stuff. And so but here's the cool thing. So because I had made the transition from owning a job to owning a business, and I'd worked on that for several years, and then I had spent the last 2 years or whatever going from the owner operator to becoming the CEO, and I was really working on mastering that pivot and that transition, that identity, that when it happened, I just stepped right into it, and my team stepped right up to it, and everybody moved into position.
Yeah.
And it was awesome because my business grew during that time.
Right.
We actually opened, we expanded our business during that time. I'll just say that. Right. And so that is an amazing thing that we have that testimony to say, but the key was that both those shifts had to happen.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to have an amazing experience with that 5th pregnancy.
And, this is probably for a different podcast and a different episode, but, we talked about earlier today, that 2-step process is actually represented on the Rubiks Cube, right? So as you go from, what we're talking about right now, that owner operator role to the CEO role, the things that shift are really, it's a sort of an inside out process initially, right? It's the vision. That vision of what exactly you were creating, what did success look like for you? It shifted, right?
Yeah.
It changed. You go through this maturation, this next iteration of what the vision of success was when you decided, I need to go from being an owner operator to being a CEO. What does that mean, and what does that look like? Because my environment's changing, my dynamic's changing. I went from 4 kids to 5 kids that my family needs me to be able to leave here, right?
Yeah.
So vision of success changed. And then you had total clarity around that. And then the next one is leadership, right? The next side of the Rubiks Cube is leadership. And you had to be able to not only have the clarity yourself, you had to be able to successfully convey that clarity to your team, right? So they've got to be able to see what success looks like and what their role is in manifesting that success, right?
Yeah.
And then that third side is actually the 6th side of the Rubiks Cube, which is energy. That's the CEO's job. You're the chief energy officer, the CEO, which is to harness your team's energy, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to collect and direct your team's energy. And as you're pulling out and saying, hey guys, for the next 6 months, I'm going halftime.
Right.
Everybody's got to be able to drop into their roles, and you've got to be able to tell them, this is what's important now, and this is what's important next. All of that has to happen, and it can't be happening in a panic.
Yeah.
It's very much part of a plan.
And here's the amazing thing. You don't have to be perfect. Because I remember doing a one-on-one with one of my CAs, my checkout CA.
And I remember doing a one-on-one with her, and she got emotional with me because she realized that just to be real frank, she knew that God sent her to work with me because she knew that she needed to be there so I could be there for my wife. Like, she had a real heart for my family. I remember she got emotional in our one-to-one because she was saying how much she loved the fact that she was able to support me so I could support my family. I'll tell you, that lifted a bit of a burden off of me. Because, there's times you're like, well, I'm just going to show up and do this because I just want to make sure nobody feels bad because I'm not here. She was like, no, we are here so you can be there. Yeah. Like that's an A player, one element of an A player who truly understands the vision, right? You talked about the vision. Right. I had the vision. I got the new vision. I had a vision of me as an owner operator, chiropractor, caregiver. What we like to talk about, the savior chiropractor, the Clydesdale perfectionist. That was me, right? Brute force. And she went through that season with me. She experienced what it was like to work with Dr. Pete that way. And then she watched me go through the transitions. And when the fifth pregnancy happened, I remember she was just so supportive and so on board. And she almost pushed me out the door. My team almost pushed me out the door because they knew, okay, this is what has to happen. We've got this.
They were clear and
we've got this. Yeah. And because they've been trained up. And we can get into that in a different way. I love that we are able to see the 6 sides of the Rubik's Cube of your business through the 2 transitions that are critical, which I can't wait to dive into that.
So let's do another episode on that. Yeah. So, we can talk about taking your job and turning it into a business through the other 3 sides. As the lens is, to go job to business, you've got to make sure that you have your systems dialed, right? Yeah. So systems have to be defined, right? That 3rd side of the Rubik's Cube. And then the 4th side of the Rubik's Cube, of course, people to run those systems, and not just people, bodies, the right people, right? Commitment to surrounding yourself with the right people. So you can put them in the right role, doing the right work the right way, right? Yeah. And then it's training, right? It's investing in training and developing and equipping your people. Yeah. Right. Which we often say is the best ROI you could possibly have as a business owner. All right, Dr. Pete, awesome. Great conversation. I think you gave everybody some true insight. This is part 1. Everybody join us for part 2. We'll talk about taking your job and turning it into a business.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.